So let's talk about hiding fields. You would hide fields when you hide fields, what happens is that the fields are not visible in report view. So when you're building your visuals, you don't see the hidden fields. And the reason you would want to hide them is basically to reduce clutter for your reports. So if there are fields that are not necessary to be visible when you're in report view, you can hide them and that way they're not cluttering up your screen. What fields should you hide? Well, anything basically that you're not going to need in a report can be hidden. Okay. So that would include key fields, like if you have a product ID, customer key, those types of things, because those fields are primarily used to establish relationships, right? You don't use them, you don't put them in visuals, you don't use them in calculations or anything like that. So you can definitely hide them. Any field that you use to sort. In a previous class, right, we went through setting up a calendar table, and we had specific fields that were in there that were used to sort the data in the calendar table. If you don't need to be able to see those fields in your visual, go ahead and hide them so they're not showing up in visual view. Any fields that are used in calculations but not necessarily used in your visual. So we'll talk about measures here in a few minutes, but when you're creating a measure on top of another measure, the intermediate measure you might not need to see in your report, you can just go ahead and hide that. And then any fields used in hierarchy. We have a hierarchy that we already created in here. And this was the product hierarchy, right? That has category, segment, and product. But we also have these fields as separate fields in our product table. So it is a good idea to go ahead and hide these fields so that there's no confusion. Just keep in your mind, you are eliminating clutter and you're eliminating confusion. Another reason you might want to hide a field is if you have two fields that have the same name or deal with the same type of data, but you want to control which one your user uses. Perfect example of this, and I'm going to go ahead and switch over to let's switch over to data view. Perfect example of this is the date field. So you see here in our sales table, we have the date field, but we created a separate date table that also has this field. And we want to control it and make sure that our users use this particular date field. And so what we did was we came down to the sales table and we hid this one. You can tell it's hidden because you see the little cross out eyeball, okay? This is in data view. Let's go back to report view. When you look at the sales table in report view, you don't see the date field at all. But what you can do is in report view, you can click these three ellipses. What I did was I right clicked them and then you can left click view hidden and it will show you your hidden fields. I'm gonna go back, right click on the ellipses, left click view hidden to uncheck it, and now it's gone. The date field was an example of a field that we would want to hide when we want to control which one our user selects. We don't want them to be confused and say, oh, I need the date field, but which one should I use? Just go ahead and hide it. Something to think about is when you publish your reports to the Power BI service, that you do not have the option of unhiding those fields. So those fields will not show up in the Power BI service. The other thing to think about when you're hiding fields is that when you hide them and you go into Analyze in Excel, the data that's pushed out doesn't have those fields included. So once you hide it here in Desktop and you go to export it to Analyze in Excel, those fields are not available. So we've talked about which fields you should hide and why you should hide them. So let's go through the process of hiding fields. You can hide the field. We're going to start off here with our report view. You can hide the field here a number of ways. Let's say we click the three ellipses and we can go ahead and click hide. And I'm going to do that to my product ID field. So I'm going to click the three ellipses, go ahead and click hide. Took it a minute. Now the field is hidden. Okay. I can go to data view and do the same thing. Now in data view, you see my sales table. The date field I had hidden before is hidden. The product ID field I just hid is also hidden. And I can unhide it by simply clicking this eyeball symbol. Takes a moment to refresh, but now it's unhidden. And I can hide it again. So there are a number of different ways for you to hide fields in your model. So we've done it in the report view and the data view. Now let's go to model view. In model view, you can actually hide multiple fields all at once. When you come here, let's see. Let me see. Let's say we want to hide manufacturer ID and product ID. Okay, the first thing you would do is you would select your multiple fields. And in this case, I'm going to use my control key. So I'm going to click manufacturer ID, hold down control, click product ID. With both of them hidden, with both of them selected, pardon me. Make sure the properties pane is open. And then here where it says is hidden, click that bar over to the right. It takes a minute, but now those fields are hidden. Let's say I have the naming convention where I've named all of my ID fields with the phrase ID. I can come up here to where it says fields, type in ID. Let's give it a minute. And that expands to show all of my ID fields. And then that way I could use the same steps that I used before. See how I'm selecting them even though they're in different tables? I can use the same steps I did before and then come here to properties and slide that bar to hide them. That's it for how you hide fields and why you might hide them.